Ron Howard grew up in front of America's eyes, first as the young Opie Taylor on the Andy Griffith Show, and then as Richie Cunningham on Happy Days, before jumping behind the camera to become one of Hollywood's most prolific directors.
Over the past 40 years, the Oscar winner has helmed big films, including Splash, Cocoon, Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, and most recently, Solo, a Star Wars story. And today, he's here to tell us about his latest project, National Geographic's critically acclaimed series, Mars. Season 2 premieres a week from Monday. Here's a peek.
Engine test should have been completed yesterday, which is in a month.
We can only make propellant as fast as we can make it. It's gonna be fine, Mike. There's one thing Mars teaches you. It's patience. Looks like they're here.
It shouldn't be.
It's not like anyone could stop them from coming. Just wish they weren't gonna be so close to her.
Commander, incoming debris. They lost their...
And Ron Howard is here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
We are so excited. I know I binge watched all of season 1, started season 2.
Cool.
I really like the approach to your storytelling. You call it a hybrid.
Yes, well, thank you. You know, Brian Grazer and I fell in love with the idea of doing Mars. It was brought to us by Radical Media. We've done some other projects with them. Nat Geo was interested. That was exciting. We started interviewing a lot of great experts.
Yep.
And you could, first of all, they were fascinating.
Yes.
Including Elon Musk, who would give us access to, you know, do research and so forth at SpaceX. But we saw that's exciting. So then the thought was, well, let's do a documentary about what everybody is doing to go to Mars, because it turned out to be way more involved and many, many more brilliant people dedicated to that idea than we ever realized. But we also wanted the cinema, we wanted the drama, we wanted the adventure. So our thinking shifted from totally scripted, totally doc, and then wait a minute.
Yeah.
So Brian actually got this idea, let's do it as a hybrid, took it to Courtney Monroe at Nat Geo, they went for it, and it was a total experiment, and yet we learned so much in season 1, and I was proud of season 1. People are catching up with it all the time, and I think it's great. But season 2, we have so much more confidence about the storytelling style, and I think it really shows in the episode.
It does. It works so well. And for people that haven't seen it, it really is, you'll go from this scripted drama into what's present day or a real news clip, and then into these interviews. Does one lead the other, or like, do you find the things to fit with the drama, or do you have the, you know what I'm saying?
In season 1, we more let the experts lead us.
Okay.
Yeah. We were learning about what it's going to take to go to Mars, what it would be like to be there, and we were building scenes around that. Going into season 2, first of all, we'd already done a lot of that research. We already knew what we were looking for. This goes years later when it started. It's the beginning of a community, and it's this clash now between science and industry.
And capitalism.
Because now it's time to mine Mars. At least one group feels that that's vitally important. So the reality is that in the second season, we knew what we were looking for. We knew what the stories were. We still went out and discovered a lot of information.
Yeah.
You know, about we spent a lot of time in Antarctica. This is not just all talking heads. The documentary portion is very cinematic as well.
Yeah.
And I think cinematic is kind of the word that we keep applying to the series, because we want to make sure that it is like a movie, that it transports you.
Right.
And but it's not. It's science fiction. Sure, nobody's gone there yet, and yet. There's so much authority behind the ideas because you have these experts explaining what it's going to be like.
Would you, by the way, would you ever have any interest in going into space?
If they needed a director, I'm not the most adventuresome person. If there's a task, if there's a story to tell,
If there's a film to be made on Mars, you'd go.
I'll do almost anything.
Are you surprised at how much of your cinematic drama really speaks to today in our politics?
Well, I mean, as you start delving into these subjects, you begin to find parallels, and of course, you begin building a new society, a human culture on another planet. It just immediately begs those kind of questions, like what are some of those same battle lines or controversies? They're not even battle lines, although things do get a little heated up there.
Your list of films, and Michelle mentioned some of them, it is a legacy on its own, but you also became a part of the Star Wars legacy.
Yes. Yeah.
What is it like for you to take on a task like that?
Well, it's I'd been around it because I acted for George Lucas on American Graffiti, and when I asked him what his next film was going to be, he described this crazy thing. It was sort of like a Flash Gordon, but it wasn't Flash Gordon, and sort of like 2001: Space Odyssey, but it wasn't 2001, and it sounded like kind of a mess to me. When I went to see that movie, I was transported as was everyone. So when I came into that situation for Solo, it was really a thrill because there is so much passion behind those movies. There's nothing I went into it and I thought, well, I wonder if this is a little bit like a television series where they kind of know what they want and they just sort of crank it out. Not at all. And led by Kathy Kennedy, that group is so focused on just trying to do great work.
One last thing. We talked about this. You were in 2 iconic television series and made it turn into directing. Your first film was Grand Theft Auto in '77, you said.
Yes.
Had you always wanted to be a director?
From the time I was a little kid, I had observed my dad directing theater, and he also ran a little improv workshop out of our house. My father, Rance Howard, who passed away last year, but loved it, loved the business, loved writing, and directed a lot of theater. Also, almost all of the directors on the Andy Griffith Show had been actors. And I became fascinated by the whole process. And they saw that. And from the time I was about 9 years old, I remember them saying, I bet you're going to wind up being a director. So I think this was something in the back of my mind. Then the 60s came along and movies were like, there was this whole revolution, starting with The Graduate and Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet and Bonnie and Clyde. And I fell in love with the medium of movies. And I realized it was quite different from what we were doing on our television show. And that's when I became a fan. And so having grown up in it and then falling in love with the medium, it became my total obsession.
We are so glad.
Thank you.
I was actually mad at Ron Howard for leaving Happy Days, but you got me back with Cocoon.
It all worked.
You got me back with Cocoon. And they're on out.
I'll keep trying to win you over and over.
Oh, you got me. You nailed Solo.
I think you got it.
As far as I'm concerned.
Multiple times. All right. This series is called Mars, and season 2 premieres Monday, November 12th on National Geographic. Ron Howard, thank you again for coming in.
Fun to talk to you all.